Also known as cold-blooded. They don't have a way of internally of cooling or heating up. So they have to rely on external heat or coldness to heat up or cool down. And that's how all amphibians and reptiles are. That's why a lot of times they'll be sunbathing in and out. And so I want to throw this out. Where are most amphibians and reptiles found? They are found near water and on land. A lot of times you'll see them, turtles especially, will be on logs, and if you get close to them, you hear this doop into the water. So they don't like you approaching them. So when you're going around your yard, do you think that you will find amphibians? Amphibians like water, so if you have a stream or a pond, and you may know that they're there. Also, by the way, we have frog calls on our Google site, and you will hear a whole bunch of them that will be during the nighttime. And they make all kinds of weird calls. You have the bullfrog, and you have the squirrel tree frog, and you have the gray tree frog, and you have all these other guys, and they all make noises. And during this time of the year, when they're trying to find a female, they'll make noises. And so they'll do this all night long. Especially around dusk, you'll hear a lot of them. If you're ever out in the woods, it can be very noisy at nighttime. With not only frogs, but you also have a lot of other insects that like to be very well heard at nighttime, such as crickets and katydids, which we talked about in another film. And there's also insect noises on our Google site as well. Florida has 118 reptiles, and so that's a lot of reptiles, and 26 are specifically turtles. And then you have on the other side, the herpetology, you have about 52 amphibians. So that makes up the majority of our herps around here. So there are invasive frogs that do live here. Down in South Florida, they have one called the Cuban tree frog, and they don't want it around. It's actually excluding and hurting native wildlife that's down that area. So if you're down Central and South Florida, you can look up Cuban tree frog and you'll see an issue. They also have problems with the tegu lizard. It is eating all the native wildlife, especially the eggs and the little guys that don't survive. So they're having a majorly hard time down there. But I encourage you to just get out there and have a wildlife checklist. You can have a little notepad like I do right here, and you can basically, I've put an observation sheet on our website, and basically what you can do is you can either copy it down on a piece of paper, or you can print off the observation sheet and record what you see and everything else. And I want you to record your mammals, your reptiles, and what is it doing? Where did you find it? What time of day was it? These are things that are important because animals are out at various times. Most of your reptiles and amphibians, well, no, they can be either or. But a lot of them are out during the daytime and at nighttime. Frogs can be, well, they can all be heard at every time of day. Alligators, however, they can be seen during the daytime as well. But we have all kinds of reptiles, and one really very well-known one that was endangered for quite a while is this guy. Where do you think alligators like to hang out at in the water? They like to be in or near water, and they're very big. There's actually been videos on YouTube recently of the Goliath Alligator. He was pretty big. Alligators are are around in ponds and other places. However, in Florida we have so many places where they can be that you just have to watch and look for their head. Their heads appear above the water, and you'll just see their eyes and nose, and you'll just see something moving. It almost looks like a log in the water, but typically it's only their head that pop out of the water. Typically you don't see the whole back unless they're swimming quite fast, but they are very good swimmers. And on land they can move at short distances. They can move very fast, like 20 miles an hour fast, but they only do it for short sprints. They're a lot quicker when it comes to water. If they grab something, what they'll do is I don't know if you've ever seen Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. He's a guy that used to be around, and but he saw that these guys did death rolls. So when the animal, and basically the animal would flip and flip and flip and flip, and so in order to kill the animal. But these guys are around, and the skin of an alligator is very sensory. It has a lot of senses in the skin, and picks up small vibration. So if someone says you have alligator skin, that could be a good or bad thing. But if you have alligator skin, it means you can pick up and are very sensitive to the world around you. Which, yeah. However, if you're referring to alligator skin as having a thick leathery surface and not very nice, then that could be a bad thing. But they like to be around water, and they can be around here. However, if you don't have a connected water bodies, you probably won't find them around your house, but you never know. But they won't be away from water. They like water, and they won't be very far from it. And we also, with an alligator, they have the difference between an alligator and a crocodile is alligators are shorter snouts, and they're broader or fatter snout. The crocodile is longer and narrower. So, and crocodiles don't appear up here. You would have to go down towards Naples in South Florida in order to see a crocodile. And then you may come across both of the species at once. So we typically don't have both species. And alligator is a reptile. Another reptile that you will see around, this guy is a land-based reptile. This is our eastern box turtle. You can see it lays eggs. And what's really cool is the shell can close completely up, so it can protect itself. However, an alligator is able to crush through that shell. An alligator's force when it chomps down is about 2,000 to 2,500 pounds per square inch. So imagine like the jaws of death coming on you and crushing your bones. Alligators are extremely powerful when it comes to that. I think it has the biggest bite force out of any animal out there. However, if you tape its mouth shut when it's closed, it will not be able to open it back up. It's very, very weak when it comes to opening back up. And that's why a lot of times you'll see shows where a person will jump on top of them and tape up the muzzle of an alligator, is because they're very weak when it comes to opening back up. However, when it comes down, yeah, you don't want to be there near them. So yeah. But this guy is found in our woods. They're not as common as they used to be, and I don't see a whole lot of them. I very rarely have come across them unless what's called bushwhacking through the forest, but typically you won't come across them. But that is our land turtle. There's another turtle, or not turtle, but tortoise, that is only on the land, called a Gopher Tortoise, and it is on the endangered species list, and is associated with longleaf pines. What it does is it makes burrows in the ground. So if you ever see a burrow and it's flat on top and kind of flat on the bottom, and it kind of looks like but if it looks ovalish, then that is a tortoise, and you need to leave it alone. I know people like to snake hunt and do things to those burrows. Leave them alone. An armadillo hole, just to give you a difference, they're rounded. So if you see a rounded top and a rounded bottom, and kind of, so it's more of a circle, that would be your armadillo. And you will find them in the woods. I almost ran over one this morning. He was too close to the road when I was flying down the road. But these are freshwater turtles that we have. We have a whole lot of different turtles. Like there's a soft-shell turtle. The reason why it's called a soft-shell turtle is because the shell is somewhat on the soft side. Then you have the red-eared slider, which is, you can see the red on it. These guys are all associated with water. You're not going to find them away from water. However, you may find them on the road. So you can make jokes all you want of why did the turtle cross the road? To get to the other wetland across the road. Ha ha ha. But we have the Swanny Cooters, and here's pictures of their upper and lower. The carapace is the top portion, and the plastron is the bottom. And it's the scientific way of telling what the top and the bottom is. You can't just say top and bottom. That's just too generalized for a scientific mind. You have to call it something very different. So, but yeah, in this picture you can see that it's showing how his head can be pulled inside. One thing that I do want to point out that you can't see on these pictures is the top of the shell is actually the fused backbone. The backbone is in the top part of the shell. So if something broke that shell, it would essentially break the backbone. And we know that things don't work well when your backbone is broken. So those are our freshwater turtles. The box turtle is the only land-based turtle. And then we have others that show up to our coast. We have many different what are called sea turtles. This is a loggerhead sea turtle. And these guys will flop themselves onto the beach. They come on the beach in order to lay eggs. They will, certain times of the year, they'll come on the beach and they'll make a big hole and deposit their several thousand eggs and then cover it back up. And this is right now being majorly protected and looked after because they are disappearing. A lot of animals like to go after these eggs, including snakes. Snakes and raccoons and pretty much everything else out there will eat turtle eggs. Then you have basically the gauntlet going down. After the turtles hatch, what they do is they climb out of the sand and they try to get down as quickly as they can into the water. And this is a gauntlet because you have raccoons going after them, you have vultures going after them, you have dogs, you have coyotes, you have bobcat and foxes and everything else trying to kill these guys before they go into the water. So after they get into the water, their life is easier. However, you still have animals in the water that could potentially hurt them, such as shark and other critters of the sea. But yes, they are heavier. A typical sea turtle can be anywhere from 100 pounds over probably 600 to 1,000 pounds. The leatherback sea turtle is our largest sea-dwelling sea turtle. These guys obviously aren't in fresh water, they're only in salt water. They like to eat jellyfish and are pretty cool. There are places on our beaches that are heavily protected. They are heavily monitored. So that is your turtles. We have things that go ribbit that start out in the water. And it has the various stages. It'll start out as an egg, and then it'll turn into a tadpole, and then it'll turn into a frog. And this is what's called incomplete metamorphosis. And metamorphosis is basically changing from one thing to another. It doesn't change kinds. It's not able to go, well, I want to be a salamander now. A frog can't be a salamander, and a frog can't be a lizard, and a frog can't be a seal. He may think he's a seal, and he go, or, but not likely. there are a few frogs that are around us. This guy likes to be around our door frames and around our potted plants. I've seen them up under trash can lids. But this is your green tree frog. And what's cool is they have these little pads on their paws, I guess, that will help them suction onto glass and to other things and make it very easy for them to climb up and down. What do you think that they have inspired in the past? If you have suction on your hands, what do you think that that is? And no, I'm not talking about Spider-Man, but it has inspired inventors to come up with ways to go up the side of a building and in order to climb without the means of ropes and other things. So it's inspired a whole lot. This is another one, and it's showing how it can dive into the water. This is a leopard frog, and they have these legs, and they can jump very, very far. It's like 20 times their body length. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to practice your frog jump. So get down, squat down, and try your hand at frog jumping. I want you to, and if you want, you can go ribbit, 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 and you can turn off the video right here and go do that. And I'll wait for you right here. But yes, I want you to try long distance frog jumping, just to see how far compared to a frog you can hop. I don't know the exact estimate, but it's about 20 times your body length. So if we tried to jump as far as they could, we could do it if we weren't human. So we'd have to have springy legs and go bounce, bounce, bounce. But these guys are all over. And I don't know where frog legs come from, but I'm sure you can make a leopard frog and bullfrog into frog legs, which is a big southern treat around here. One thing I didn't mention is when you're out, it's good to have field guides. If you're interested in reptiles and amphibians, this is a reptile and amphibian book from Peterson. It has a vast array of pictures inside of it of various critters. And it'll tell you where it's found, when it comes out, what call it makes, and that type of thing. So very good to have. Another really cool guide that is only found near water is the salamander. The Munson Hills area south of Tallahassee is a very good area to find salamanders. You can typically find them, and they're doing a research project, an ongoing research project that I don't know how long that's been going on. I think it's like 5 to 10 years, and it's trying to see how they're doing, and they invite people to take a look at the ponds and keep an eye on them for a year. That is a citizen science project that you can get involved in, and potentially, I mean, you could talk to them and say, hey, I have a pond near my house, and we could look for salamanders here. Salamanders do have a rougher time. And one thing I didn't know until I worked for them is tadpoles. These are all of the tadpoles that can be found here or in the area are frogs, and they're also salamanders. They can turn into a salamander like you see here. These are all salamanders, and they start out as tadpoles as well, and they have differences, and you probably noticed that they have different colors and different sizes and different habitats that they can be in. But I found that very cool. Salamanders are very interesting critters. They can actually breathe through their skin, just like most of our amphibians. They have a permeable skin layer, which means that they can actually breathe through their skin, which also means that if you're handling them, it's very good not to have any oily or nasty things on your hand, because they can get transferred into their body, which is not a good thing. If you want to find salamanders, what you typically do is go to a water body. Typically it's a non-moving water body, such as a pond, a stream, whatever, and you look under tree branches and other things. They are around here, and they are right under our noses a lot of the time. There's more than we think that there are around here. So, and you can also, I mean, if you got guides to the tadpole stage of salamanders, you could go sweep them out of a lake or a pond and take a look at them and go, hey, that's a blah, blah, blah. We have all kinds of salamanders. We also have one called the red newt. That's the red newt. But you can see it starts out as a tadpole. So this guy, the reason why it's called red, anyone know the reasoning why it may be red? Red is a warning color. Red is basically saying stay away. Like a stop sign, it says stop. Or a monarch butterfly is another good way to identify it. Monarch is basically saying don't eat me, you'll regret it. That's what this guy is doing as well. It can give off substance on its back that will irritate your skin. So just be mindful of that. But they are very cool, and I would highly recommend that you go find an area, and you may even look online. You may try to find Salamander Club or Florida Salamander Club online, or a reptile group online, and you can ask them, hey, where can I find salamanders, and go take a look at them, and they'll help find you the nearest place. There's another group of reptiles that I have not covered. They are behind me as well. They're ones that most people don't like. However, they're treated as bad guys, and they shouldn't be. They are very helpful to have around your house. They get rid of critters that potentially could harm your area, such as mice and frogs and anything else that's that small, like moles and shrews. Anything that can fit in its mouth can be eaten by Mr. Snake. So snakes are very cool. This is how they sense the world. They have a tongue that flicks out of their mouth, and it basically picks up little taste cells that are out in the environment and brings them back. And it takes them to what's called the Jacobson Organ. And the Jacobson Organ lets them know what type of prey that is and where it's located. It can pick up the scent trails of different animal species, and it's able to follow them and to slither after them. But they can use these senses to find their prey, and so they don't necessarily need to be out during daytime. If you are picking up heat and vibrations, what would that tell you? That tells me that it could be out at nighttime, which they can be. And reptiles are ectothermic, which means that they have to pick up the heat of sun. But imagine being out during the 90 and 100 degree days of our summer. During the summer, they will typically only be out at nighttime or during dawn and dusk. So that's when you will see them. A lot of times when they're on a rock, they're probably digesting a critter. It takes them about 2 weeks for a critter to be fully consumed, which is a long time. How many meals do you think a snake will eat during a whole year? 10, 50, 100, 1,000, 10, 3, 4, 5? They typically eat 3 to 4 meals every year. If you're caring for a snake, you usually feed them once a month, depending on how big the snake is, but it doesn't eat a whole lot, and that's a good thing. They're a lot easier to take care of than most people think. Just make sure that you have a lid that closes on your aquarium, otherwise he'll find his way outside of that cage, which I've had happen to me. I was working at a nature center and one climbed out. But they can pick up heat. Think of very, very, very small, minute traces of heat. So it's like, it's 1/10,000th of a heat degree temperature change, and they can sense it. And that's a lot. I mean, that's just a very, very small amount of heat coming off of it. And they're like, hey, and if it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, then they know that, hey, there's a mouse or something there near me. And they use this sense to pick up where an animal is. And if it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, it's just like the hot and cold game. What you could do right now if you wanted to, go hot and cold, and you could be blindfolded, and your sister or brother or mom or dad can go hot, cold, and you would have to go after something. So you can go hot, and so that's what it's doing. It's just basically picking up the heat trail. It also has good eyesight. The eyesight picks up a little further beyond it, so it can definitely see at nighttime. And they have, and if you notice the eyes on a venomous snake, they're slitted like a cat, so they can pick up the light of nocturnal or nighttime hour prey easily. And then you have hearing. And hearing is kind of, this is a misnomer or not really accurate. What they do have are pits on their side of their head, and they can pick up very small vibrations, like very, very tiny vibrations. So if you're walking along and you're stomping along, you're not going to see a snake. I very rarely will come across a snake out there on the trail. The normal times that I've come across one is when he's slithering along, or it's a change in temperature. Like if it's about hibernation time, what they'll do is try to heat up before they go in for hibernation. Or if they're just waking up in March, what they'll do is they'll typically sit in the trail, and it's not to be seen. It's like if you were out in the environment and you wanted to get heat, where would you be? You'd be on a rock. You'd be in the middle of a trail. You'd be on concrete. So these are typical places you would find snakes. A snake is not going to hang out underneath a tree or in his burrow when outside in the sun is a lot hotter. We know from experience that if we go from hot to cold, like if we go in the shade, that there's about a 5 or 10 degree difference between the sun and the shade. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for snakes. But we have a lot of different snakes around. I'm not quite sure how many different varieties. I think it's like 40 or 50 different snake species that we have. Most of them are non-venomous, but we do have venomous snakes. And these are our venomous snakes, and I'll come closer to the camera. The top one, so we have the eastern rattlesnake, and the rattlesnake, and the difference between a venomous snake and a non-venomous snake, the head is larger than the body of a venomous snake, and if you look at their eyes are slitted, and also the bands underneath them, if you really wanted to pick it up, below their opening, if you will, of where everything comes out, there is one group of cells and not two. And then we have this guy. We have a canebrake rattlesnake, and we have a pygmy rattlesnake. And the pygmy is a small, littler guy. He typically only gets to be like a foot long. I have seen these out there. They're quite frequent, especially near the coast. But your eastern rattler can grow up. In the old days, they have found one that was 30 pounds and like 8 feet long. So that's a very, very big snake. Typically now you will only find them 5 to 6 feet long and not as big. But I've seen them stretch out across a road before. So they can be quite large. Then you have a cottonmouth. This is a juvenile cottonmouth. Then you have an adult male cottonmouth. If you're ever in a boat and you have overhanging trees, these guys like to hang around in trees, and they also won't be away from water. And the reason why it's called a cottonmouth, if he opens up his mouth, it's white inside, so it has a cottony looking mouth to it. The copperhead, this guy has a less toxic venom. It's called the copperhead, and it's what I got bitten by. I was out on my patio one evening in Missouri, and I let my dog out, and the next thing I knew, I'd been tagged on the foot. If they do go after your body, which typically 80% of the bites come from people that are messing with it. The other people are just not as lucky, and so they get bit when they're not watching where they're going. I spent 15 hours in the hospital with a very big bill, and I don't mean a bird bill. This is a coral snake. This is in another family, and what it actually literally has to do is to gnaw on you. It doesn't really have fangs. It has actually backward fangs on it, and lots of people mistake this guy for this guy that's next to it. This is the Scarlet king snake. If you notice the different banding patterns, red on yellow, kill a fellow. Red on black, friend of Jack. So red on yellow, kill a fellow, so it'll hurt you. Red on black, red band on black band is a friend of Jack, so it's a friend of you. Well, not for those that don't like snakes. The typical snake that I find outdoors is your black racer that are extremely fast. You'll see this black snake and it'll take off and go into the woods very rapidly, and hence the name black racer. They will fly across the yard and go to where it needs to go very quickly. So that's good to know. The other very common one is a garter snake, not a garden snake, a garter snake. And they have longitudinal lines. I don't have a picture of one. Look it up, but it's called a garter snake, and they are definitely around here and very common. The rat snakes are somewhat common here. We have like the yellow rat snake that's fairly common, and I've seen some of them. Then we have a gray rat snake, which I've seen a lot more of. But there are all kinds of snakes, and it's just a matter of looking. Most snakes will kind of hibernate during the winter time, but it matters about the temperature. If it's above 60 or 70 degrees, a snake may come out and say hi, and then go back in its burrow when it gets colder. But typically snakes will sleep through the winter or kind of hang out together in a group during the winter, sharing body heat. But they don't want to be messed with. Just leave them alone. They can be found in wood piles. They can be found under leaf litter and other places. Just give them the respect in places they need. Also, do remember that even if you chop off its head, it can still clamp down on you and inject all of its venom. Its venom is in their head, behind the eyeballs. So just watch it if you are doing that. I prefer you not to. One other group is our lizards. The most common lizard that we have, that we see all the time, are green and brown anoles. They're the chameleon-looking guy that you find all over your yard. I've found them in our house. I found them in our office. But they are very common. But they are the most common guy around here. I've also noticed it's called a blue-tailed skink. It has very black and white bands going down the whole length of the body in a blue tail, hence blue-tailed skink. I have seen them around, but the whole reason why I'm talking about all these animals is so you can go out there and see for yourself all these critters. Don't be so scared that you're going to get attacked by these critters. You know how often I've gotten attacked by a critter? Never. The one time that he got me is because I may have stepped on the snake in order for him to bite me. So animals aren't out to go after you. They aren't out to say, hey, I want to put hurt on this guy. And they're not there for that. So go out there, enjoy, have fun. And if you're looking under stuff, what you can do is you can take sticks and lift things and look under it. They have a tendency to hide. I found a number of snakes when I didn't want to. Like there was a box on the side of the road and I lifted it and there was a rattler below it. I have found them like that. So if you're lifting anything like a piece of wood or a piece of cardboard or a log, just make sure that you're lifting it with something or ready to react very quickly. Another thing about the venomous snakes, they can only strike about half of their body length. So if you're only about 2 feet away, you're more than far enough away from it. And it also, if it's slithering along and not coiled up, it can't really come at you and strike you. What it has to do is it has to go back like this and then be able to spring at you. It has to load up and coil back like a spring and then spring out. So thank you for joining me on this adventure through our herp world. Just remember, herps are amphibians and reptiles. They're all around us. They like water and land, and they can be found all over your land. Give them the respect that they need, and I will join you down the road on another video. Thank you for joining me.